What just happened? Trump claims peace between Israel and Iran, but is it real or just a pause before the next storm? Oil prices explode, Tehran turns to Putin, and Americans take to the streets. Meanwhile, at the NATO Summit, Zelenskyy drops a bombshell. Europe must spend more or risk losing everything. And in a stunning legal twist, Ukraine scored $1.3 billion victory over Gazprom. Will Russia pay, or will we see global Assad ceasefires? This is Ukraine Today. I'm Zurislava Kolesnikova, and I'm here to break down the chaos and what it means for Ukraine and the world. Stay with us. A full ceasefire between Israel and Iran, announced by Donald Trump and set for June 24, was meant to end a brutal 12-day war. Iran strikes first with silence, Israel to follow 12 hours later, and peace within 24 hours. But can this fragile truce survive, or has it already been broken? The world holds its breath as a so-called ceasefire between Israel and Iran begins to unfold. Announced by US President Donald Trump, the 24 path to peace sounds promising, but reports from the ground suggest violation may have already started. Will global powers step in to hold the line, or are we watching a conduction of the next explosion? Stay with us as we track every hour, every statement and every missile.
This is not our war, but it affects us. And the further it goes, the stronger that impact becomes. Some of the weapons that Ukraine could have received are now being urgently sent to Israel. Here's just one example. The US has already approved the delivery of more than 10,000 aerial bombs and 13,000 JDAM kits. These are precision guidance systems that turn ordinary bombs into guided ones. About 3,000 Hellfire missiles, both anti-tank and anti-personnel. The total amount of aid is over $4 billion, and a significant portion of it is exactly the type of weaponry that Ukraine in particular is critically lacking. And this is the most important thing. The US has already redirected 20,000 missiles intended for combating drones, which were supposed to be delivered to Ukraine, to the Middle East after the escalation began. And for Ukraine, this is a significant loss. President Zelenskyy has even publicly emphasized that Kyiv needs high-precision aerial munitions, those same JDAM kits, as well as anti-missile and anti-drone systems, which are now being redirected to the Middle East. The insufficient stockpiles of weapons and ammunition in the world are a problem in general. Manufacturers can't keep up, and the West has a limited supply of modern weaponry. And when two allies, Israel and Ukraine, simultaneously need the same weapons, it inevitably becomes a matter of choice. Israel, for example, is forced to purchase additional air defense missiles on the very same markets where Ukraine is looking for them. And this creates unavoidable competition for limited resources, especially in the field of air defense. The problem is even broader. The West's attention shifts at the moment when a new armed conflict erupts. And it's not that Ukraine is no longer a priority. That's not true either. But, you know, it's human psychology, and the powerful of this world are just ordinary people too to switch their attention. And now in Washington, I don't just mean the press or, for example, discussions in the halls of Congress or the corridors of American power, unsurprisingly, there is more talk about Tehran and Jerusalem than about Kyiv and Kharkiv. This complicates our negotiations with our allies because when a Ukrainian government delegation was recently here in the American capital during meetings in high offices, the issue kept coming up. It would be good to plan a new aid package right now. Yes, the chances for it are still slim at the moment. Here in Congress, it hasn't even been initiated. They are waiting for it to be a proposal from the White House. They say that's the only way there's a chance to gather the votes. But any process needs to be started. Ukraine now has a new argument, a willingness not just to ask for aid, but to purchase a significant portion of the weapons. And now, the escalation in the Middle East makes the appearance of such a package even less likely. There's another aspect. As long as Israel is at war, Russia profits. An escalation of the situation, especially if it drags on, as CNN is reporting, could lead to rising oil prices. And that automatically means more money in the Russian budget, which in turn means more missiles, more drones, and unfortunately more strikes on Ukraine. As a solution, Ukraine insists on a scenario involving a strict price cap on the energy resources that Moscow can sell. However, the Canadian G7, for example, has shown that Trump's team is not yet ready to support this. And without America, such a mechanism will not function fully either. There is also a flip side. Iran will likely provide less assistance to Russia, as it will be preoccupied with its own problems and will itself need the drones it had been selling to the Kremlin. Moreover, part of Iran's facilities for producing Shaheeds has been destroyed. But it's not that simple here either. Iran has obligations not only regarding deliveries, which it seems it can fulfill with the launch of production on Russian territory. And for now, it's hard to say whether the escalation in the Middle East will disrupt these processes and plans. So, war is always bad, but when several armed conflicts break out in the world at the same time, it makes finding support even more difficult. I'm sure that this is exactly what will be discussed at the NATO and European Union summits throughout this entire week about priorities and how to set them.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
As oil prices explode and the world braces for impact, Iran is calling on the Kremlin for help, while chaos unfolds in American streets. Is the Middle East on the brink of a deeper crisis? Who stands to gain and who's already losing? The global response is fires, the stakes couldn't be higher, and the next 24 hours maybe change everything.
Instead, Israeli aviation struck several targets in the center of the Iranian capital. At least 6 military airfields came under fire. Among the targets were also the headquarters of the Basij military group and the Evin prison. Political prisoners and opponents of the Ayatollah regime are held there. Not even the symbol of Islamic propaganda, the electronic clock counting down to Israel's destruction, was spared from the bombs. It stood on Tehran's main square and was counting down to 2040, the date when Israel is supposed to disappear.
At this moment, Air Force planes are intensifying strikes in the Tehran area, focusing on the headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Meanwhile, the Iranian authorities have already turned to the Kremlin for help. All of this is due to the US strikes on nuclear facilities 2 days ago. The head of Iran's foreign ministry, Abbas Araghchi, personally delivered a letter to Putin requesting support. And although the Russian dictator noted that the aggression against Iran is unfounded, Tehran does not hide the fact that they want more decisive assistance from Russia.
We appreciate Russia's position, which today has confidently condemned this attack, and we hope that this will receive support in the Security Council.
The escalation of the conflict in the Middle East is already affecting global energy markets. The price of oil has jumped to $81 per barrel. Experts warn, if Iran decides to block the Strait of Hormuz, the price could rise by another 70%. Through this strategic maritime passage, which connects the Gulf of Oman with the Persian Gulf, 20% of the world's oil is transported every day, and in the Middle East, it is used to transport energy resources throughout the entire region.
A significant portion of this oil comes from the Middle East. Without this oil or any disruption in the supply chain, there would truly be a shortage in the heart of Europe.
Against this backdrop, the head of the White House is hinting at an interest in regime change in Iran.
It is not considered politically correct to use the term regime change. But if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, then why not change it?
Iran has launched a large-scale response to the strikes on its nuclear facilities by firing missiles at American bases in Qatar and Syria. Meanwhile, global energy markets are closely monitoring the situation, fearing a potential oil crisis. Anna Basova, Sofia Zhelinska, Podrobnosti, Inter-TV channel, Marathon, United News.
Let's analyze the situation in the Middle East with Vyacheslav Likachov, a member of the Expert Council at the Center for Civil Liberties and an Orientalist. Welcome, Mr. Vyacheslav. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes.
Can Europe finally outmatch Russia on the battlefield, not just with words but with real defense power? At the NATO Summit in The Hague, Ukraine's President Zelenskyy calls for every nation to commit 5% of GDP to defense. Will this united front be enough to crush Putin's illusions once and for all?
We believe that 5% of GDP is the right level. A united Europe can create such defense capabilities that will shatter Russia's illusions that a war with Europe could bring it any benefit. To destroy this illusion more quickly, we must deprive Russia of the ability to continue this war against Ukraine with impunity. It is better to contain Russia where it is already stuck. I am grateful to every country and every leader who has already decided to allocate part of their national defense spending to support Ukraine. If every European party allocates at least 0.25% of its GDP to this, and we are grateful to those countries that allocate even more, like the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and to countries with significant commitments, like Germany.
Increasing defense funding is the main issue of the summit, which naturally also concerns Ukraine, because NATO countries are the primary donors of military aid. Volodymyr Zelenskyy estimated the capacity of the Ukrainian defense sector at $35 billion, but it is currently only operating at half that capacity. According to Zelenskyy, Ukraine is ready to produce 8 million drones per year, but for now it lacks the necessary funds. The European Union can help with this, as it has already opened access to its defense programs.
We have just discussed how important it is for Ukraine to invest in its extremely flexible and innovative defense industry. That is why we have developed a funding program amounting to 150 billion euros. We call it SAFE, under which member states, as well as Ukraine and other partners, can take out these loans to invest in the Ukrainian defense industry, which has demonstrated its ability for innovation and for fast and reliable large-scale production. We have a lot to learn from you, but most importantly, we can help you survive and win.
European allies also spoke about the importance of continuing to put political and economic pressure on Moscow. The 18th package of sanctions against Moscow is expected to be adopted by the end of this week. The European Union wants other countries to follow this example as well.
We need to exert pressure. We must put pressure on President Putin so that he sits down at the negotiating table and seriously engages in talks about a just and lasting peace. That's why the 18th package of sanctions is a tough one. I know that our friends in the G7 will follow this example with their own sanctions. So all of this shows that you are among friends. You can count on us. We are on your side.
In a comment to our TV channel, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said that the Ukrainian authorities are in talks with Sweden about providing Gripen aircraft, also known as Griffins. In the meantime, Sweden is strengthening the capabilities of the F-16s already delivered to Ukraine.
Introducing a combat system is always a long-term process. Right now, under these circumstances, we are helping in other ways. We are providing other flight capabilities in terms of surveillance and radar which are compatible with the F-16 system. That is why we have agreed not to introduce the Gripen right now. But we are not ruling out its potential introduction either in the medium term or, of course, in the long term. Quite the opposite, in fact. I believe that in the long run, the Gripen fighter jet will be a very good solution for Ukraine.
The president of Ukraine continues his visit. He has already addressed the Senate and the House of Representatives of the Dutch Parliament. In his speech, he thanked the Netherlands as one of the largest donors to Ukraine's defense. He emphasized that Russia poses a threat to other nations as well, not just Ukraine, and is planning hostile actions against NATO member countries. Russia turns everything into a weapon, starting from the nostalgia for the USSR that some people feel, and yes, ending with energy resources. Russia always violates every agreement it has signed and seeks friends among dictatorial regimes.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Naftogaz just delivered a crushing legal defeat to Russia's Gazprom with an international court ordering over $1.3 billion in damages. Will Gazprom pay up, or will Ukraine begin seizing Russian assets worldwide? It isn't just a court win, it's a high-stakes move in an economic war.
The International Arbitration Tribunal has ordered the Russian company Gasprom to pay $1.37 billion to the Naftogaz group. This became possible due to the decision made in the arbitration process which was initiated back in September 2022, and because the Russian company Gasprom failed to fulfill its obligation, its contractual obligation starting from May 2022, essentially not long after the full-scale invasion. Gazprom tried to neutralize or undermine this process in Russian courts. That didn't work, and we have a fair decision. I want to highlight three things. First, this became possible thanks to a well-drafted contract, which fully and primarily protects and has protected the interests of the Naftogaz group. Second, this is the brilliant work of the Naftogaz legal team and our international legal advisors. And third, and most importantly, this is yet another precedent for the victory of international law, the supremacy of international law. And this gives us optimism. It gives confidence both to state-owned and private companies that sooner or later the law prevails, always.
Serhiy, can you share your plans in particular regarding how you will now recover or collect these funds from Gazprom?
Naftogaz will immediately send a formal demand for payment of this outstanding debt to Gazprom. If Gazprom does not comply voluntarily with this request, we will then move on to the next stage, which is the process of compulsory debt collection.
Mr. Serhiy, since you are already with us, may I ask how things are progressing regarding the Crimean assets? Are there any updates on this front?
Yes, you are right. I would like to remind you, as I mentioned before, why this is yet another precedent for the supremacy of international law. In the past, Naftogaz has already won an arbitration case against Russia as a state amounting to $5 billion. And now the process of recovering this debt is actively underway. We already have two practical precedents of Russian assets being seized in France and Finland. A total of 10 countries are involved, where the Naftogaz group is primarily trying to seize and subsequently recover these assets. So we are moving forward actively. And the case that was won last Friday will become another precedent for us.
Mr. Serhiy, thank you. In fact, this is very important in light of recent events when Ukrainians are feeling discouraged. Such an important and victorious piece of news is coming in. I'm sure it will give all of us a boost of optimism. Thank you for being with us and staying in touch. Serhiy Koretsky, Chairman of the Board of Naftogaz of Ukraine, on the recovery in favor of Ukraine from the Russian Federation.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you believe the world needs to hear the truth, support our mission. Comment, like, and don't forget to subscribe to stay informed. Your voice matters, your support matters even more. Become a sponsor and stand with independent Ukrainian journalism. Together we are stronger and louder. See you soon.